Morgan, the feature writer for the San Antonio Marriage Initiative. Today, I am just so delighted to introduce you to Bill and Pam Farrel. They are best-selling authors of more than 55 marriage and family-related books, as well as being popular international speakers at marriage conferences, date nights, single events, and parenting groups. Bill and Pam are most known for their book, Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti, which has sold more than 400,000 copies and has been translated into 16 languages. Pam, Bill, thank you so much for being here.
It's a delight. We love meeting those people that care about marriage. So thank you.
Yep. Hi, Amy. Anything that helps marriages, we're interested in.
Well, you guys are so much fun to talk with. I know we're just going to have a great time today. Let's start with, as I told you before, when I think about spaghetti and waffles, I think of two gluten-filled carbs that I can't eat. So I know there's more to it than that. Let's unpack your whole process with that, because that's kind of your signature resource.
It is. And by the way, I have to eat gluten-free pasta and gluten-free waffles now too. So I'm in your diet plan. But yeah, the fun story about how men are like waffles and like spaghetti started. Bill was a pastor.
Right. And we had been working with couples and doing research, and we had discovered that one of the big issues in marriage is the differences between men and women. Like, I just had a man tell me this morning, I really don't understand women, but I love being around them. And that's, we knew it was a big part of marriage. And so we started doing research, but we realized the average person doesn't speak in research language.
Right.
So we were looking for a word picture that would help men and women kind of process all of it. And I especially had a passion to get men involved in the discussion, because it seems like getting women involved in a discussion about relationships is a little bit like fishing at the hatchery. It's really easy to do, but getting men involved is much harder. So I was looking for some way to present this. And as I was helping to run the youth basketball league in our town, a man approached me one day and he said, Bill, you're a pastor, right? I said, well, yes. He said, do you ever meet with couples? I said, yeah, yes, I do. He said, well, good. Can I bring my wife in? Because I think she's broken. And I was really intrigued, but one, because it was a man starting the conversation, and second, I want to know what he meant by she's broken.
And he'd been watching, our friend had been watching our relationship, and so he threw in, you and Pam seem to have a good relationship. That's kind of what we want. So can I bring my wife in?
Right. So they came to my office, sat down, and like part of the story is she is maybe the most verbal woman I've ever met. Like, I know studies say women have more words every day than men do, and that's because the part of the female brain that monitors verbal interaction is larger in women than it is in men. But she's like top of the charts, like top 1%. And so they sat down and he said, go ahead.
So she starts talking and she's jumping from subject to subject to subject to subject to subject.
And while she's doing this, he looked at me and went, she does this all the time. Like, I think something's wrong with her, like something's broken.
What do I do? He's like deer in the headlights.
And it was one of those moments in life where all the experience came together. You know, the research, working with other couples, wanting to make it male friendly. And the thought that was in my head was men like food. So I said to him, hey, why don't you think about your wife's conversation like a plate of spaghetti noodles? That every noodle touches every other noodle, and she just has to go through and touch every noodle. So she might jump from one subject to another because it's all connected for her. And he went, okay. And he just listened to her. And she talked for 55 minutes straight.
Bill taught him some, active listening skills. So she felt the freedom to talk. And after 55 straight minutes, she sat back. She's like, oh, that was so good. Probably first time she hadn't been interrupted, And she's like, okay, if I'm like spaghetti, and you say like women integrate everything, so my mind works like spaghetti, then what's he like then?
And my response was, well, we're out of time for today, so we'll get together in a couple of weeks and I'll explain it to you. Because like the word picture just hit me. So I left and I said, okay, I have 2 weeks. I need a food analogy that illustrates the way men process information.
That they compartmentalize.
Right. And we knew that men compartmentalize their thinking, but nobody talks that way. And my boys were making toaster waffles one day, and I went, I think that might work. So I met with this couple again, and I said, okay, here's how men work. If you look at a waffle, there's a bunch of boxes, and they're all separated from one another by walls. And the way we as men operate is we put the first issue in life in the first box, second issue in the second box, third issue in the third box, and so on. And we spend time in one box at a time in one box only. So I looked at this guy, and I said, it's your turn today. Now, is there something you want to bring up? And he said, well, yeah, there actually is. And I said to her, okay, you cannot change subject because it's his turn.
Yeah, stay in this
So you have to
compartment,
stay-
stay in this box.
Yeah, and I had to kind of be the relationship police that day because she tried 6 times to move the
Tried to
conversation.
spaghetti it after
Yeah.
that.
Right, had to keep coming back to that
And I
box.
said, no, write that down. We'll do that later. Brought them back. And they solved their issue in my office that day.
Which was the issue that had put them at the brink of divorce. And so they went from the brink of divorce to like bonded and connected. And Bill came home and he's like, hon,
I think I found something, and I explained all this to her, and her response was classic. She said,
I said, wow, that seems a little corny, but I trust you and I trust God. So yeah, we can share it in the seminar this weekend and see how it flies. So we had a small seminar, maybe 20, 25 couples, and we shared them in our like waffles and like spaghetti part. And then
it was the hit of the day.
there's a part of men
Right,
compartmentalizing.
Like 2 things we explained to women that help communication in marriage. Is the first is that some of the boxes in every man's waffle, they have thoughts, but they don't translate into sentences. So sometimes men just make noises. You're like, woo, yeah. And we raise boys, so we kind of get that.
I have boys, yes, adult sons, so I get
Yeah.
that. Yes.
I was driving around town one day with 2 of my sons, and
when they're young.
my middle son in the back seat went, ah! And I went, what? He goes, nothing, Dad. I just wanted to say that because they make noises.
And then the most important part that we shared in the seminar that has become like amazing, viral, gone everywhere, is that some of the boxes are absolutely positively like blank. There's
There's
nothing
no thoughts,
there.
there's no words.
Yeah.
And we as men park in these blank boxes. And it seems like every time we get in these blank boxes, our wives ask us the dreaded question.
So what you thinking?
Which is really hard for us guys because we tried saying the truth. We're thinking nothing. And the response we get is, well, you can't be thinking nothing. You have to be thinking something. So what is it? And
Why won't you tell me?
and the reality is that there are times men just think
Nothing.
and it's not an insult. We're not holding anything back. We're just recharging for the next push in life. And honestly, we didn't know this was a problem until we got married because we've been doing this since we were little kids and we thought it was a really nice place to go. And then our wives pointed out to us like it's a problem. And we're like, well, we don't get it. Because as men, we really do go into blank boxes for a while. And as long as we don't live in the blank box, it's a useful place.
And men are like waffles when like spaghetti. Now it's in its 25th anniversary edition. We've updated it. It's a video for small groups or couples that they can watch it in video form. And there's a Bible study that goes with it. And also we have a singles version and a teenage version. We're working on a kids version, but that's a little trickier to explain. But we're working on it. And it's translated now into 15, 16 languages, gone around the world. It's kind of fun to see the book covers in different, how they view waffles and spaghetti. It took a while to get into Spanish. That they had to move waffles down into the Costco's before we were able to get that translation done. So it's interesting. Yeah, but we knew that we had made it. Like, this was like the pinnacle when a Christian counselor sent us a picture of her wedding cake because she always used Men Are Like Waffles and like spaghetti in her practice. And when she was dating to get married again, it was transformational in their relationship. So instead of a bride and groom on their wedding cake, they had waffle and spaghetti on the top of their wedding cake.
I love it. And I love that you brought in, because most of our audience here are our marriage champions. So I love how you really incorporated so people really can know that this is not, of course, everybody can just benefit it individually, but this is great fit for small groups, for churches, for Bible studies,
Yeah.
for everything. I've been married almost 27 years, and that idea of the blank waffle spot, that was new news to me. But that is really, and I'm the mom of two boys, but that is really helpful, because then
Yeah.
it just takes all of the irritation away.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we knew that it was true that men have a blank box. And we also have found now research, and it's footnoted, there's a university researcher that backed us up that men have that blank box. But I knew it was because, just you get that look on your son's face when you ask, like if you give 2 or 3 directions at once, you get a or
Right.
you'll be talking away.
It's that look right there, Amy.
You'll be talking away, and your husband's kind of like gaze drifts, and so something's going on, but it's not connecting to you.
Right.
And so it would share it in individual counseling appointments, and the women were like, "Are you sure?" And then when we share it in a conference format, and everybody erupts in laughter, and all the guys cheer, the women are like, "Oh, it's everybody. It's all those men. Yeah, not just my husband."
And that can really help, just again, like take that level down 1,000. And I know, obviously, your style, I mean, you guys are so fun and funny and enthusiastic in your speaking and your writing. And I know you kind of started out with questions. Actually, you mentioned that couple that came to you that sparked the spaghetti and the waffle, saying, "You know what? You guys look like you like each other. You look like you have a good marriage. This is why I'm seeking you out." But that was your trademark. That's what you guys did, right? Tell us about your journey.
Right,
Yes.
because we come from craziness. I'm the firstborn, a daughter of an alcoholic dad with severe rage issues. Like domestic violence was characteristic of the home that I grew up in. And so I was looking for something different. And my mom's best friend, Kathy, had a really good marriage. And so she invited our family to come to church. And there at church, I saw I met wonderful people, like the people in your audience that loved each other. And I'm like, wow, love does exist. I want to know the author of love, God. And so it was transformational for me to see love in action in these couples' lives. And then Bill was a little bit older when that we need a mentor thing hit.
Right. So I grew up in a home where my mom had a very abusive life, and her response was fear caused her to isolate. And so I grew up in a very isolated home, and my dad, like many men in his generation, he just disappeared to the garage because he didn't know what to do with all this stuff.
Stayed late at work.
So
and mom, she struggles with emotional and mental illness issues.
So we got married at 20, and it was important to us, but we didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like we looked at each other and said, we are madly in love, and we have no idea what to do.
We love each other. We love God, and we don't have a clue.
So out of desperation, we would go to church together, and I would have us stand in the back as people went and sat down. And I would look for couples that appeared to like each other. So if they were like talking and smiling, or he had his arm around her,
holding hands,
and we would sit right behind them. And in our church, we had a greeting time. So halfway through the service, you'd stand up, you greet people. And I would look the guy in the eyes, and I would say, "Hey, you look like you're in love with this woman. Is this real?" And if he went, "Yeah," I would say, "Well, how do you do it?" Yeah. And he would say, well, we don't have time right now to talk about it. So we'd go to lunch after church. And over lunch, we would just ask them like really practical questions. Like, what do you do first thing in the morning that sets a atmosphere in your house? And how do you resolve conflict? And how do you encourage each other throughout the day? And how do you handle the things you don't particularly like about each other?
What was the hardest thing that you went through, and how did you survive it and grow closer? Like just really super practical.
And what have you done that you would never do again because it wasn't a good idea the first time? We just asked really practical questions, and we discovered that really ordinary couples had great wisdom to share. And so we began learning really good marriage principles at ground level, coming from people who they weren't experts, they hadn't done a bunch of research, but their marriage was working.
And my grandparents were a part of that too. They
Mhm.
were married more than 60 years. And on their 60th wedding anniversary, Bill and I, were at the celebration. I said, Grandma, Grandpa, we travel the world. We teach on marriage. What's the secret of long lasting love? And my grandma, they're two farmers, that survived the Depression. My grandma looked at my grandpa and she said, pure grit and determination. And I thought, wow, that's like so practical. And then we found the research of what makes long lasting love. And the top one is you choose that you want a long lasting love, pure grit and determination.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is great advice. And I love how, too, all these questions that you asked, whether it was when you were dating, whether it was when you were newly married, or I have a feeling you guys are still asking questions. They wind up in your books, right? Tell,
Oh, yeah.
tell our champions how your questions have wound up and how they could benefit them.
Right. So when we were dating, Bill had this notebook. Before we could go bowling or to the beach or anything, he had this relationship notebook, and was full of questions. And so we would sit and talk about those questions, and then we would go do our fun date. Well, that eventually turned into the Before You Marry book of questions that helps couples that are dating and getting serious, to ask those vital questions that you need to talk about before you do the big I do. And then in the back of, like, we went out one day, it was like our 10th anniversary, I think. And we were on a dinner cruise in San Diego Bay, and there was lights and there was music and there was good food, there was dancing, and it was so romantic for us, but not romantic for the couple sitting next to us. They started talking about the cars and the bills and the IRS, like talking about taxes on your anniversary, mood killer, right? And so they started arguing. And finally, the woman started crying. She's like, we can't argue. This is our anniversary. So they just quit talking, like held captive on this boat for 2 hours in silence and misery. And Bill and I, our hearts just went out to them because really the busyness of life had just pulled them apart. And so from that point on, in every one of our books, in the back, there's dinner and dialogue questions, coffee and conversation questions. Our newest book, the Marriage Meetup, we found out that oftentimes you go out for a romantic date and then you do start talking about issues, cars, kids, bills. And so we actually have 2 times a week that we meet, and one is our marriage business meeting, and we've done it now for 42 years. We call it the Monday Marriage Meetup, which now is on Wednesday because that's where schedule works. But during COVID, we finally thought, you know what, let's put this out. Everybody asks us, what's the format? How do you have a business meeting for your marriage? How do you have a marriage meetup? And so we wrote out the template. There's 52 weeks. There's devotions, the best of the Farrels all the way through. So you end up a year later with this strong marriage, and you're pulling together as a team. And our little motto there is coffee conversation equals connection. And so a simple marriage meetup will, on the business side, helps you pull together in the same direction. And then a romantic red hot monogamy once a week gives you light at the end of the tunnel, something to look forward to. And so all that questioning turned into some good, meaty, but very fun activities for couples.
And let me just make a comment, Amy, about questions, since we're talking with the champions.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the key to these questions is that there's lots of questions of the heart, because marriage is a relationship of the heart. And when people's hearts are connected, they get along really well. They give each other the benefit of the doubt. They tend to forgive each other. They overlook some of the shortcomings. But when the heart gets disconnected, then you start evaluating based on behavior. And when you do that, you get in trouble because none of us can act good enough for long enough to meet the other person's expectations. But we're uncomfortable with questions of the heart. So most of our questions are very pragmatic questions. Like if you sit a couple down and say, hey, just talk. Well, how much money do we have in the bank? And what's our
the
schedule? And what are the kids doing? And they all become pragmatic questions that don't stir the heart.
Yeah.
So in our books, we include questions of the heart. Like we just had a kind of a first of the year overall global planning.
So we have a State of the Union, just like how the president gives a State of the Union address in January every year. Typically, we have a State of our Union meetup to see, you know, what went well, what were the wins, what do we want to change. Those kind of questions can kind of kickstart every year.
And that can become a stressful conversation if you focus on what we did well, where we need to improve, you know, what I liked that you did last year. So we started that meeting with, so what are the 10 things you appreciate about each other?
And what this year drew your heart to my heart? What was that connection moment that stands out to you? So some of those kinder, gentler questions.
Well, it just sets the atmosphere that the only reason we're having this conversation is because our hearts are connected. And couples who maintain that connection of the heart tend to do really well. But when it just becomes a work relationship, then all of your differences collide and you have more conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're trying to feed couples the questions of the heart so they can have those conversations that keep their hearts connected.
I love that. I can see a lot of application in small groups, and because there's ways that a small group could use this, even like with times where the couples could talk together, or knowing that they're doing this book together, and then kind of come back and share. Or how have you seen it applied?
Right. In small groups, we love it because like oftentimes you'll watch it and then you have some choices. You can split up between men and women and then come back and have a dialogue with everybody in the room. That way the women get what they need to pour into their marriage, the men get what they need to pour into their marriage, so they get some hints from the other couples, like how this is how it works, and the freedom to share that. But we've seen it, like when our most favorite small group was when we ran Men Are Like Waffles, Like Spaghetti for our best friends. And we have never laughed so hard or prayed so hard, you know, for couples, because we really were able to connect at a deep level, but totally enjoy one another. Of course, it has to start off with a spaghetti dinner and it has to end up with waffles with ice cream, you know, in a cone at the end. So the food is helpful.
And we do have a small group curriculum.
Yeah.
So we have videos and we have workbooks.
And all the questions.
So if somebody wants to run a small group, it is a plug and play product that you can get from us.
I love that. Well, and then you've got the Before You're Married. And let's talk about your Heart Monogamy, because you said that's another one that people really resonate with.
Right. That's our second bestseller. And Heart Monogamy, the story behind it is kind of fun too. We were, it was our 25th wedding anniversary, and we had just signed a book contract with Harvest House to write a book about sex, but it didn't have a title yet. And our friend Anita Renfro, we had brought out for her to be the entertainment for this dinner dance and then a cruise that we were all going to do together. And she got up, and she's from the South, so she's like, hey y'all, we're here to celebrate Pam and Bill's righteous Heart Monogamy. And my friends leaned in and they're like, that's a great title. And she heard them say that. She's like, oh, you can use that, girlfriend. So we did. And then our son got up shortly after that.
And we had asked him to say a blessing before dinner. So he got up and he said, hello, my name is Brock Farrell, and I'm the first product of my parents' righteous Hot Monogamy. And the title was born.
Yeah.
I am really glad that he could see the humor of that, because my son
was almost engaged, so he really saw the humor in it for sure.
My sons are in their early 20s and they still don't. It's still creepy to the parents, you know, the thought of their parents.
One of the things about Heart Monogamy is we look at, like, most people have a diamond on their ring, and if you look at a diamond, it has many facets. There you go. It has many facets, and so does Heart Monogamy. If you have unity in all, we have 8 areas that we look at, and if you have unity in all 8 of those areas of your marriage, like from finances to the kids to social intimacy, to physical intimacy, of course. So if you have intimacy in all 8 areas, you're going to have a lot of red hot monogamy. But if you're arguing about money or how to raise the kids, you're not going to have much red hot monogamy. So we actually break it down into those 8 areas, and then we give you questions for interaction, of course, and hands-on homework. Pun completely intended. This is homework that you want to do. And we connect it biblically to the Song of Songs. And so we look at that real couple who's really in love and trying to make the relationship work. And so we pull out, real life examples. And then we put in plenty of humor. I can't tell you, there's so much humor that came from our friendship circle, from a friend who put candles all over the bedroom and then knocked one over and started a fire. I mean, fire! It really was red hot in their bedroom. Yeah, and so all kinds of fun stories are smattered through it too, so that you laugh together and you make progress together, and you pray together and you enjoy sex and red hot monogamy.
Well, and one of the reasons we wrote the book is we wanted to get the message out that the people who have the most satisfying sexual relationships are people who've been married long term and are willing to talk about their intimate life.
Are committed to one another. It's just the 2 of them,
right.
No one else, no fake stuff. It's them, and that area of commitment is what really gives us the freedom to enjoy our sex life, and it releases us to be ourselves in that intimate setting. And really, that's why God has the parameters that he says sex inside marriage is the best place for it, not the it doesn't have any of the downsides that you see if you misuse that wonderful gift. And so it is a gift that God created, and when you see it as a gift, you value it and you value your mate, and then it becomes red hot. Like, how do you fan the flame? How do you keep that spark and sizzle? Red hot monogamy answers those questions.
Well, and we live in a world that likes to highlight new sex, because when you first fall in love, there's chemicals released in your body that cause you to be addicted to the person you're in love with.
So that's why love can be blind. It's not always good.
Well, and early in a relationship, like almost anybody can develop a sex life because you're just like supercharged. But then when those chemicals subside, then you have to develop a sexual interaction with one another. And that's harder to market. So in this high media generation, everything new is made a big deal out of. And when it's not new anymore, then we get bored, or we start looking elsewhere. And we want to get the message out that, hey, those couples that have been married for a while, who are just sitting holding hands, have that really contented look on their face, they're not bragging about their sex life, but it's because they don't have to.
Right, they're just enjoying it. And the studies now, the science, that there is this bonding ability. Some of the things that bond you to your mate are laughing together, are like having a momentous occasion, like a birth of a child, and experiencing that together, even having an issue and then solving it together will shoot out this
it releases
bonding.
Oxytocin.
Yeah, and so that oxytocin, and then every time you have red hot monogamy, that bonding chemical is released, plus the happy endorphins get released too, so everything looks better. Like, I don't care that we don't have money in the bank, because we just had red hot monogamy and it felt great. And so it helps you have that mindset, that positive mindset, that you can tackle anything together if you make red hot monogamy a priority in your relationship.
Right. And the other point of the book is that everybody's relationship's unique.
Right.
So you have a secret between the 2 of you as a married couple, and when you cultivate the secret, it keeps drawing you together. When you try to imitate somebody else's, it's disappointing, but when you develop your own, you kind of have that other people don't know what we do.
Right. You have your own rhythm. You have your own how many times a week or a month or whatever. Everybody has their own rhythm. And so comparison kills marriage, but compassion and connection, it builds a marriage.
I love that. Well, if you were going to give one takeaway to our marriage champions about the one thing us you'd like them to remember about you, what would it be?
I would say pray with and pray for your spouse, because sometimes in this crazy world, we can't do anything. We can't fix whatever that problem is. And as a mate, you want to fix, you want to help your mate, you want to take that problem away. But sometimes what you really need is each other. And prayer is that like it bonds you together, it helps you see into each other's hearts so you know what's going on in there. And so of all the couples we like interviewed all those years, a lot of them, the last thing they said was pray for your mate, pray with your mate. And we have a fun thing, we have a romantic ritual, we call it. So every time we say grace, or we pray together, we kiss each other. And it's hard to stay mad at somebody you kiss that much. And so look for your romantic ritual. Our youngest, their romantic ritual is they pray and they'll say I love you, and the other one will be like I love you more. And they have like this bulletin board, chalkboard, and at the top it says I love you more than. And like she's a doctor, I love you more than all of the patient's paperwork I have to do today. And he's an engineer, I love you more than all the calculations I'll have to make today. And so they just try to outlove each other, and that's a precious romantic ritual as well.
And there are two things I would like people to remember us for. The first one is we hope you will take your marriage seriously, but not take yourselves too seriously. That there is no perfect marriage. It's not even a good goal. So you're going to do some goofy things. And if you can laugh about it, but take your commitment to each other serious, it tends to be a pretty good journey. And the second thing I would say to all the champions is every marriage is one breakthrough away from being a great relationship. But a lot of people, they struggle. They wonder if they're ever going to pull through. And usually it gets really intense right before the breakthrough, but it only takes a moment. One good experience, one thing that's said, one thing that's done can turn the heart, and a difficult marriage can become a really good marriage in a short period of time if they make it to the breakthrough. So don't ever give up on a couple. Don't ever believe a couple can't make it, because it only takes one breakthrough to turn everything.
You know, and Bill mentioned humor, like cultivating that. During COVID, we always take a prayer walk every night at sunset. And so on the way out, we would listen to Christian comedians, or we'd tell each other jokes. And on the way back, we would pray for each other. We're like, okay, keeping that humor going. And then in Red Hot Monogamy, we talk about having a code word, because the Song of Solomon talks about, you know, come to my garden. And it's a code word for, hey, let's have sex. And like she says, come to my garden and browse. So she's like, browse, baby. Whoop, whoop. And so it's an invitation. And our code word actually developed from A Manner Like Waffles. We were explaining how men and women process stress differently, that women talk their way through stress. Like if I'm stressed out, my mom knows it, my sister knows it, my best friend knows it, the clerk at Walmart will know I'm stressed. But men like to go their favorite easy boxes to rest and recharge. And so a lot of boxes, a lot of men's favorite recharger boxes
We're
look
pretty
like
simple.
boxes.
They actually look like boxes.
Yeah, like the football field, the baseball diamond, the basketball court, the pool table,
the refrigerator,
and the bed is a favorite box for husbands
like
to go to when they're all, you know, stressed out. So that that Red Hot Monogamy box, that bed box favorite, it's kind of like the free square in the middle of a bingo card, and they can get there from every other square on their waffle. And so we shared that at a conference, and one couple brought us back a sign that hangs on our office wall that says "Born to Bingo." And at the end of one of our cruises, a couple brought us this gift bag, and they're like, open it. And so we opened it, and they were the t-shirts that we'd been seeing on the rec department that said, have you been bingoed today? So all I have to do is like slide a bingo card in Bill's suitcase or under the door, and yes, he's like interested immediately. So each couple look for your code word, because that Red Hot Monogamy and just enjoying and having some humor together will go a long way in this crazy world we live in right now.
I love it. I love it. That is a great. I will never think of the same.
That's good.
I love it. Well, we could just talk for hours because you guys are so much fun, but I'm going to have to let you go. But as always, everyone, Marriage Champions, if you would like to connect more with Pam and Bill and their ministry, Lovewise, you can find us at samarriage.org.